There is a doctor in Chicago making $380,000 a year. On paper, most people would call her rich before they finish the sentence. She drives a leased BMW. Her children go to private school. She eats out more nights than she cooks at home. Her mortgage is $4,200 a month. She has the right zip code, the right resume, the right friends, the right vacations, the right photographs, and the right explanations for every dollar that leaves her account. And yet, if the furnace dies, if a tax bill arrives larger than expected, if one child needs an expensive medical procedure, if one income stream pauses for 90 days, she does not have breathing room. She has to sell something, borrow something, delay something, or pretend the problem is smaller than it is. That is not wealth. That is costume. I want you to understand something that took America a long time to admit. A high income can hide poverty better than a low income, but it cannot cure it. In some cases, it makes the disease harder to diagnose because the patient looks healthy from the outside. The car is expensive, the neighborhood is expensive, the restaurants are expensive, the schools are expensive, the vacations are expensive, the social circle is expensive. Everything around the person looks like abundance. Only the balance sheet tells the truth. The truth is simple. If all of your income is already assigned before it arrives, you are not free. I do not care whether the number is $50,000 or $500,000. If the machine requires the next check to keep turning, you are living on a leash. A velvet leash is still a leash. This is the high-income poverty trap. It is one of the most misunderstood financial patterns in America because it violates the story people tell themselves about money. Most people believe income solves financial stress. They imagine a ladder. At the bottom, life is hard. In the middle, life gets easier. Near the top, pressure disappears. Cross 6 figures and you breathe. Cross 200,000 and you relax. Cross 500,000 and money stops mattering. That story is emotionally satisfying. It is also wrong. Recent research made that plain in a way that should have embarrassed the whole country. Roughly 41% of Americans earning between $300,000 and $500,000 reported living paycheck to paycheck. Around 40% of those earning more than $500,000 said the same thing. Read that slowly. People making in a month what many households do not make in a year are still experiencing the same underlying fear as someone with a fraction of the income. The house is bigger, the dinner bill is higher, the vacations are farther away. The anxiety is the same. Other studies told the same story from different angles. Large shares of households earning over $100,000 reported living paycheck to paycheck. Bank analysis showed that even among households earning over $150,000, a meaningful portion were spending more than 95% of income on necessities or necessity, like fixed obligations. That is the key phrase, necessity. Like at high incomes, a great many luxuries get promoted into the category of must-keep. That is how the trap tightens. The mechanics are not complicated. Psychology does the work. A person earns more. At first, the new income feels like relief. Then it feels normal. Then it becomes committed. The apartment becomes a house. The house becomes a larger house with rooms that are mostly there to reassure the owner that he has arrived. The reliable car becomes a status vehicle. The public school becomes private tuition. The local vacation becomes a resort trip. The occasional dinner out becomes the standing answer to weekday exhaustion. The first streaming subscription becomes 6. The helpful convenience becomes the permanent system. Each individual upgrade feels minor relative to the paycheck. The aggregate effect is ruinous. This is what people miss. Poverty is not always low consumption forced on you by low income. Sometimes it is high consumption voluntarily chained to high income until the person has no margin, no optionality, and no resilience. He earns more, but he is not stronger. He is merely carrying a larger machine on his back. The machine is made of fixed costs. That is why so many high earners feel trapped in ways they cannot explain to lower earners without sounding ridiculous. The lower earner hears the number and thinks the problem must be imaginary, but the pressure is real. A family earning $80,000 may spend $2,000 a month on housing. A family earning $300,000 may spend $8,000 a month. One family has smaller numbers. The other has more polished numbers. Both can be equally fragile if both have built a life that leaves no room for error. Once the fixed costs are installed, they begin behaving like laws of physics. The tuition must be paid, the mortgage must be paid, the car payment must be paid, the club membership must be paid, the travel standard must be maintained. The social expectations have to be honored. The children now think of that lifestyle as normal. The spouse thinks of that house as earned. The friend group thinks of that spending level as baseline. Nothing is optional anymore, at least not emotionally. That is where the trap becomes more dangerous than ordinary overspending. Ordinary overspending can be corrected by a bad month and a little embarrassment. High-income overspending becomes identity, and once spending is fused with identity, reduction feels like humiliation rather than prudence. Now, let me tell you something I have seen my whole life. The people who actually build wealth usually do not look the way the culture says wealthy people should look. The numbers on paper and the signals on the street often point in opposite directions. The studies on ordinary millionaires have been remarkably consistent for a long time. Most of them live in modest or middle-class neighborhoods. Most of them do not drive the newest luxury vehicle. Most of them budget long after they become financially independent. Most of them do not spend four figures on clothing. Many live in homes worth less than $500,000, even after reaching millionaire status. They are not performing wealth, they are storing it. That is why a plumber with a 10-year old truck and $2 million in investments can be genuinely rich, while a surgeon with a leased luxury SUV, private school obligations, club fees, and revolving debt can be rich only in photographs. I have lived in the same house in Omaha for decades because I learned early that utility compounds better than display. A house should protect your life. It should not consume it. A car should move you. It should not become a monthly ceremony of depreciation. Clothing should serve the body. It should not become a tax paid to strangers for social reassurance. The market rewards ownership. It does not reward costumes. That distinction is where almost all of the financial pain begins. Researchers once gave us a useful pair of labels. One group were prodigious accumulators of wealth. The other were under-accumulators of wealth. The concept matters because it makes one point unavoidable. Wealth is not measured by income. It is measured by what income leaves behind. There is a formula that, while imperfect, still tells an uncomfortable truth. Multiply age by annual pre-tax household income, then divide by 10. That gives you a rough picture of what your net worth should be if your income has actually been converted into assets rather than consumed by appearances. A 50-year-old earning $250,000 should be around $1.25 million in net worth. A great many high earners miss that mark by an astonishing distance. They have the arfe-sumfe of a wealthy person and the balance sheet of a nervous tenant. Once that gap opens, psychology makes it worse. A person earning $400,000 with a net worth of $300,000 does not feel wealthy. He feels late. He starts looking upward instead of inward. He compares himself not to the median household, but to the people one rung above him. The benchmark moves. Wealth now means $2 million, then $3 million, then 5. Financial comfort becomes a number that retreats every time he approaches it. That is the hedonic treadmill in its purest financial form. The target is never reached because the target was never the point. The real objective was status confirmation, and status has no finish line. It only has a next level. Social media poured gasoline on this. In earlier eras, comparison was local. You compared yourself to neighbors, colleagues, family, friends, maybe the successful dentist across town. Now comparison is industrialized. You compare yourself to a curated stream of highlights selected by people who may be leveraged to the ceiling themselves. You do not see the line of credit behind the kitchen renovation. You do not see the home equity loan behind the vacation pictures. You do not see the revolving card balance beneath the watch, the tuition stress beneath the smiling family portrait, or the marital tension beneath the beach resort post. You see the output, not the invoice, and so a high earner can begin to feel poor in the presence of other people's edited illusions. He responds by upgrading his own life to preserve his ranking. The upgrades create higher fixed costs. The fixed costs erase flexibility. The loss of flexibility creates stress. The stress justifies more convenient spending. More convenient spending erodes savings further. The circle closes, and the person names the problem pressure, never realizing it is structure. Debt then enters as the enabler and the anesthetic. At lower incomes, debt is often about survival. At higher incomes, debt is often about continuity. That difference matters less than people think. In both cases, debt is filling a gap between cash flow and behavior. The person borrowing may earn a tremendous income, but if he carries large balances, finances consumption, and depends on future income to support present choices, then the core weakness remains. High earners carried large credit card balances in recent years. Many held chronic balances rather than temporary ones. That is not because they are mathematically incapable. It is because they have built lives large enough to absorb whatever income arrives. Give an undisciplined structure more cash and it simply swells to fit the container. I want to say that again because it governs nearly everything in personal finance. Spending is an organism. If you do not confine it, it will expand until it occupies the entire habitat. That is why higher income alone fails so many intelligent people. They assume the next raise will solve the anxiety created by the previous raise. It never does. The lifestyle expands to meet the income. The margin remains absent. The fear stays put. Then the person becomes convinced. The answer is not behavioral change, but an even higher number. No. The answer was never more gross income by itself. The answer was always conversion. Can you convert income into ownership before lifestyle absorbs it? That is the whole game. During the pandemic, Americans were accidentally shown what this feels like. Savings rates spiked, not because everyone suddenly became wise, but because many forms of spending were interrupted. Travel paused, dining slowed, social obligations shrank. For a brief period, people glimpsed what their finances might look like if the machine were not constantly fed. Later, the machine came roaring back, and much of that money disappeared with it. The lesson was there for anyone paying attention. More surplus is possible. It just requires that cash reach savings and investment accounts before it reaches the approval circuits of the brain. This is what real wealth builders understand. Savings is not the residue left over after a full life has expressed itself. Savings is the first claim on income. The wealthy person does not ask what is left after everything else. He asks what must be removed first so that the future self is paid before the present self starts negotiating. The old studies found that real wealth accumulators commonly invested at least 15% of annual income before treating the rest as available. In today's language, that idea is even more important because temptation has been automated. The phone can spend your money all day long without asking permission in a way that would have shocked people 50 years ago. If you do not automate saving and investing, convenience technology will automate consumption for you. The difference between a 4% savings rate and a 15% savings rate is not academic. It is destiny. A household that saves 4% for 30 years may arrive at retirement with a cushion. A household that saves 15% or more arrives with genuine options. Raise the savings rate further, and the transformation becomes dramatic. Two people can earn the same $300,000. One saves $90,000 a year. The other saves $15,000. Give them 20 years and a reasonable return. One ends with the rough beginnings of generational wealth. The other ends with an expensive memory of having once made a lot of money. That is the brutal arithmetic of the trap. It does not confiscate wealth in one theatrical moment. It leaks it away every month through choices that looked harmless in isolation. A little more housing than needed. A little more car than needed. A little more dining than needed. A little more tuition than needed. A little more image maintenance than needed. A little more convenience than needed. A little more subscription. A little more first class, a little more prestige, a little more room, a little more assumption that because you can buy it, you should keep it. No single decision ruins the pattern does. Now, I am not making a moral argument against private schools or restaurants or good travel or nice houses. I am making a structural argument. If something matters deeply to you, spend on it. But if you spend on it, then be honest about what you are giving up to keep it. The problem is not premium choices. The problem is unexamined accumulation. The problem is when a household wakes up one day and realizes nearly every dollar has already been promised away. Yet no one in the house can say which promises were actually worth the price. The escape route exists. It is uncomfortable. It is also simple. First, count fixed costs before you count luxuries. Most people do the reverse. They look at the paycheck and ask what they can still afford. That question is useless until you know how much of your life is already contractually spoken for. Mortgage, rent, tuition, debt service, insurance, transportation, recurring services, memberships, baseline dining, baseline travel, household payroll if you have it, every subscription, every regular transfer, every lifestyle commitment. Write the machine down. Most people are frightened the first time they do this honestly, because they finally see that they are not choosing month to month. They are merely servicing architecture they built slowly. Second, decide what is genuinely valuable and what is merely performative. The house may matter, the school may matter, time with your children may matter, health may matter, proximity to work may matter. Fine, keep what earns its keep. But if a cost survives only because it helps preserve an image, then call it what it is, image rent. Once named, image rent becomes easier to cut. Third, reverse the order of cash flow. Automate investment first. A person earning $400,000 who automatically routes $120,000 into productive assets before lifestyle gets a vote will become rich unless he does something spectacularly foolish elsewhere. He can still live very well on what remains. He just cannot live in every direction at once. Fourth, stop confusing a rising income with rising security. Security is not how much enters the household. Security is how long the household can stand still if the income slows down. If you make $400,000 and have no ability to absorb 6 months of disruption, you have a high standard of living but a low level of security. That is an important distinction because one can vanish much faster than the other. Fifth, remember that wealth is optionality. The culture teaches people to use money to buy visible proof of success. Intelligent people eventually learn to use money to buy invisible freedom. The freedom to say no to a bad client. The freedom to leave a job that has become corrosive. The freedom to survive a bad market without panic. The freedom to help family without borrowing. The freedom to age without terror. The freedom to make decisions from strength instead of urgency. Those freedoms are funded not by income, but by retained capital. I have always liked businesses with durable economics, because durable economics creates surplus, but a household is no different. A sound household produces retained earnings. A foolish household distributes everything it makes, and then borrows when the world disappoints it. If you ran a company that way, no sensible investor would buy the stock. Yet millions of people run their own family balance sheets with exactly that logic and then act surprised when the anxiety never leaves. You cannot consume your way into peace. You cannot lease your way into security. You cannot dine your way into freedom. You cannot prestige your way into a fortress. Those things can be enjoyed, but they cannot do the job people secretly assign to them. They cannot make you feel finally safe. Only margin can do that. Only ownership can do that. Only the quiet accumulation of assets that require nothing from you except patience can do that. The high-income poverty trap persists because it flatters the ego while starving the balance sheet. It allows the person to feel successful in public while remaining fragile in private. It is dangerous precisely because it comes wrapped in approval. No one stops a man in a luxury car and asks whether he has real liquidity. No one looks at the large house and asks what the debt service did to his future. No one sees the dinners, the schools, the vacations, and the memberships and says, that all seems expensive relative to your net worth. The applause hides the weakness. So let me give you a standard harsher than applause. If your income stopped for 6 months, would your life collapse or would your assets carry you? If you had to choose between preserving your image and preserving your balance sheet, would you know which one matters? If you earn an extraordinary income but save like an average consumer, are you actually building wealth or merely renting a simulation of it? Those are not rhetorical questions. They are the dividing line between people who will one day own their time and people who will spend their peak earning years financing a lifestyle large enough to impress others and too fragile to protect themselves. The doctor in Chicago does not need a raise nearly as much as she needs a reckoning. So does the lawyer, the executive, the consultant, the sales star, the business owner who confuses revenue with retained capital, the dual income couple who keeps saying next year will be the year they finally start saving seriously. No, the year is not coming on its own. Either you decide that some part of your income belongs permanently to your future, or your present will keep eating all of it. And the present has a large appetite. The trap does not care how much you make. It only cares whether you keep enough to matter. That is why more money was never the real answer. The answer was always what you did before. The money had time to disappear.